I try and tell a story with every picture. And it's going to be something about, the location, or even if it's a thought going through my head that people might not really understand, but tries to get them to think a little bit. But sometimes even getting the picture itself has a story to it. And one of those pictures is my picture of Fairy Falls. It's called A Fairy Falls from Yellowstone National Park. And this is a 7-mile hike about, it's a round trip, and it's through a wooded area for a good part of it. And I'm hiking by myself, and not always the smartest thing to do when you're in a location like that, but you take certain precautions. You carry a canister of mace that's actually made to deter bears, so that if a bear does attack you or another animal, you can spray it. And I didn't have it that day. So I got myself a little nervous at one point on the way back on the trip, because I'm walking through the woods and just felt a little odd. Something just didn't feel right. So I'm singing, because that's one thing that you do, is you make noise. You let the animals know that you're around. So I'm clapping, I'm singing, I'm stomping my feet on occasion, I'm making a lot of noise. I get tired for a minute, so I'm quiet for a few minutes, and all of a sudden there's this loud cracking sound in the woods, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? And I started making lots of noise and continue walking, and I stopped afterwards, and I bought the bear spray. I was gonna wait till I got out of Yellowstone because it's about a third cheaper, but just didn't feel like risking it. But there's even more to this story than just that, because as I'm walking back from the Fairy Falls, there's this cloud line coming behind me. And then there's thunder and lightning coming behind me, and it's like, oh great. I'm trying to get back to my car. I still have about 1.5 miles to go, and there's a thunderstorm, and I'm carrying, a couple $1,000s worth of equipment on me. And I'm not really carrying a true waterproof bag. It's resistant, but it's not waterproof. So, I'm moving as quick as I can. And of course, being a photographer, I see something I like, I stop and I take a picture. I got this gorgeous picture of the Grand Prismatic Pond, kind of. That's what was in front of me, but as the clouds were moving and the light shines through, the colors in the pond from the bacteria were reflecting in the steam coming up off of it. So you had this area of steam on top of the pond that was yellow and orange and blue and green. So I stopped and take the picture. And then I start seeing the lightning and hearing the thunder a little bit louder. And at that point, there's only about 1/2 mile left to my car. So I put the camera in the bag and I start walking as fast as I can. I literally got to my car, threw my bag in, and it started to downpour. So I just made it back in time to avoid that storm. But things like this happen, and it's part of the challenge when you're gonna be a photographer out in nature, that you have to watch your weather. You have to really be observant of everything that's going on around you, because things happen and you are taking a risk, whether it's a risk of wildlife, whether it's taking a risk of being on a small rock taking a picture like I did over here. And I have a picture of me kneeling on a rock because the rock wasn't wide enough for me to actually set up the tripod fully standing. So I had to kneel down on the rock, walk across a bunch of dead trees to get to the rock. And there was some nice person that when I asked them if they would take a picture of me with my phone while I'm doing this, they said yes. And it kind of shows, a little bit of a different perspective again, gives you a different picture. I didn't want to walk to where everybody was taking their pictures. I didn't want to take a picture from the trail because they're just a little bit too, the angle was just a little bit off. I was getting too much of getting too much of these rocks here and not enough of the waterfall because these rocks were coming over this way. So I had to change my perspective. So I did it by walking out onto this area that, okay, at that one it was only about 30-foot fall, but it was on the hard rock. So yeah, it would hurt if I would have fallen off the rock. But sometimes that risk is worth what you get in the end. And what I've decided to do with these pictures of the waterfalls, and I'm actually going to be doing it with some of the running water there. As I'm doing printing them on canvas, and then the water itself is actually going to be textured. So I'm taking additional layers of my UV varnish and then putting it on there and using it to add some dimension to the water so you can see a little bit more on how it's flowing. Makes it a little bit glossier so you can tell, this looks a little wet. It makes it stand out from the background, or in some of the pictures, it makes the other part of the picture stand out more because it kind of makes you change your focus between the glossy area and the semi-gloss, because I never use a matte, but it's always somewhat glossy. So by using that type of technique, I'm able to pull people's attentions to two different parts of the picture, and it just kind of makes them look back and forth. And it helps you notice different things that's in the picture itself. More people will do this type of technique than using the metals as photographers, but it's still not something that a lot of people do. It's time consuming. I spend an hour, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the picture, hand painting all of that on there. It's tedious. Sometimes you have to move it around. I've had pictures where I got it on there and it's like, I'm really unhappy with it. It's set up to the point that I can't do anything, so I let it dry, I recoat it, flatten it out, and do it again. So even these pictures, I'm only going to print 35 or 25 of this canvas picture. All 25 of them will be unique because there's no way I can make that texturing the exact same every time. My technique might change a little bit, so it's going to make it a little bit different. One picture I might emphasize one area of the water a little bit differently than I did in another picture. Sometimes it's just going to depend on what's going on, not only in my mind, but what it is I'm seeing, what it is I'm doing, how it is that everything is even setting up that day. Is the material I'm using a little bit thicker, is a little bit thinner from batch to batch. All of this makes those pictures a one-of-a-kind piece. Even though there's 25 of the print, they're still, each one is different.